Welcome to When It Hits the Fan, Lane County's favorite podcast for all things emergency preparedness. Whether you're just dipping your toes into the world of emergency preparedness, or you've been building bunkers since Y2K, we've got something for you. Hosted by Lane County Emergency Management, this podcast is all about equipping you with the knowledge and resources to be prepared and stay safe, no matter what hits the fan.
Before we start this episode, I want to make a quick apology for the extra background noise. Our guest, Isabel, works mostly in the field and didn't have access to a totally quiet space on the day we recorded. We appreciate that she took the time to talk with us and hope that you, like Tiffany and me, feel the value of the information she shared outweighs the inconvenience of the extra noise. Thank you. Hi, Tiffany. How are you doing?
Great, Devon. How are you today?
I am doing well and excited to be here. I heard a rumor that there might be some exciting announcements in emergency management. What's up?
Well, it's November, so people should be getting ready for winter readiness. I guess that's the, lead with the preparedness du jour. But we have some big grant opportunities that have landed in Lane County this fall, and it's really exciting. We got a grant from the EPA to develop 6 resilience hubs. We got a grant from the Oregon Department of Energy to develop a fuel resilience plan for the county, and we're getting started on community wildfire planning. So that's exciting for us. What are we doing here? Who are we talking to today?
So we are lucky enough to have convinced our animal welfare officer, Isabel Merritt, to join us. She is one of 2 animal welfare officers with Lane County Animal Services, and she has a lot of experience over the last few years helping people with large animal evacuation. So wanted to talk about that today.
Hi, Isabel. Welcome.
Hi, how's it going?
Great to have you here.
Thank you.
So, Isabel, I know that you had sort of a traumatic start here at Lane County.
A little bit. It was definitely a sink or swim moment, but I learned a lot, and here we are.
I believe the first time we met was in 2022 during the Cedar Creek fire, and you had been on the job for less than a week. And you were called and told to set up a large animal evacuation area. And then I called a couple hours later and said, hey, I'm bringing a bunch of reporters through and you're going to talk to them.
Yep, that is about how my time with LCAS started. Overall, we were pretty successful, and we definitely learned a lot that year.
Wow. Isabel, so we talk on this show a lot about with our partners and amongst ourselves about what we do on what we call a blue sky day versus when there's a disaster. Will you start just by talking a little bit about what you do when we don't have an emergency underway?
Yeah, for sure. So when we aren't under an emergency, we're not operating a shelter, doing shelter in place, evacuating, any of that kind of stuff. Myself and our other officer are responsible for ensuring the welfare and safety of our community and our community animals. We handle all dog licensing, not us directly. Our wonderful staff here who stay here in the office, our office staff, handle all of our dog licensing and take our calls, answer any questions, dispatch, make sure we have the information we need to go out and onto calls. So we cover quite a lot when we're not in emergencies.
Great. It sounds like you have probably a lot of stakeholder relationships. What are those and which ones carry into the disaster environment?
Probably our most prominent disaster relationship in the county is honestly with our citizens and with local ranchers, local animal owners, horse owners, people like that. When we are operating emergency, we are actually mostly volunteer based. So there will be our core 4-person team and then 1 part-time person. And then we have a list of volunteers that we call. They come out, they help us get the shelter set up, they help us care for the animals. LCSO, the Lane County Sheriff's Office, and the Mounted Sheriff's Posse also help us quite a bit. But we wouldn't be able to do what we do for animals without our volunteers.
That's terrific. Hey, you mentioned supporting in place and sheltering. We've talked about sheltering in place with people, but you change that up a little. So would you talk a little bit about sheltering animals versus supporting in place?
So sheltering versus supporting in place. So sheltering is when an animal is brought actually down to our physical shelter location. Staff and volunteers on site care for the animal around the clock. There's always someone there keeping an eye on them. We ensure that they have vet care, and essentially it's almost like boarding your animal while you're out of town or something. You're having someone else take care of them while you handle everything. If we're doing a shelter in place, mostly that's for animals that are either too many animals, like 100 head of cattle or something. It's not really something that's able to be supported in a shelter environment, or maybe a horse that can't trailer, or just an animal that wasn't able to be caught and removed. Anything like that would be a shelter in place situation. So we would go up, we would provide water and feed per the care instructions. We ask the owners kind of what needs to be done, what the animal's daily routines are, and we try and match that to the best of our ability. It's not always doable due to the amount of animals that are in the county, but we do the best we can. We make sure that there is water and food available, shelter, and then if the animal needs medical treatment, we can either have a vet go up there, we've done that in the past, or we catch and corral the animal and bring it down to the shelter to receive medical care. We don't just do livestock when we do shelter in place, so we also handle shelter in place for dogs and cats if they're not removable. Like if you have feral cats or a scared dog that won't come out from under the porch, anything like that.
And to clarify for myself and people
Mm-hmm.
listening, we're talking about a scenario, for example, where an area has been evacuated and people
Yes.
aren't allowed there, but their animals remain. Is that correct?
Yes, so that would be like a level 3 evacuation zone. We do shelter in place for level 2 evacuations, depending on what the situation is. And then our shelter opens to people to bring their animals at a level 2.
In past episodes, we've talked about human go bags. So things that you should have on hand if you need to evacuate.
Mhm.
What would you recommend if someone wanted to put together a similar thing for their large animals? Are there some common items people should have on hand?
Yeah, for sure. So if your animal's on a specific type of feed, we always recommend trying to bring like a couple of gallons of Ziploc baggies of that feed, because you don't know if you'll be able to get that immediately when you get them to a shelter or wherever they're staying. A bale of hay or two if you have time to throw it in, a water bucket, any medications. It can be really good to have just like a little folder with their vaccine records. You're going to have people who don't know your animal taking care of your animal. If you can give them as much information as possible, then you can ensure that your animal's getting the best care possible.
Terrific. Hey, for the large animal owners listening, if you just had 2 or 3 tips to give large animal owners to prepare for evacuation and emergencies, what would they be?
My first tip would be to have a transport plan in place. If you can't haul your animals, have a friend. If you don't have a trailer or something, make that plan before we're even in fire season. If you're on a street where there's, someone has like an 8-horse trailer, but they only have 2 horses, but they can swing up the road and you can bring your horse in the driveway and put them in the trailer. Make those connections, make that plan. We do transport animals who the owners aren't able to transport, but that demand's pretty high. So that would be my first tip, is to kind of have a transportation plan. My second tip would be to handle your animals daily. Sometimes it's hard with livestock animals. People get, you got cows out in the field. You don't go out there and work with them every day. You just throw them their feed, check on them, make sure they're okay, leave them alone. Even your chickens, you go out there, collect the eggs, give them their food, water, all that. But if you get your animals really used to being handled, really used to being, moved around in an area, it can really help during an emergency when you have 5-10 minutes to get everybody loaded up and out.
Great. Probably also with the stress of the animals, I can imagine, particularly livestock or animals that aren't domestic and used to being quote unquote part of your family. What tips do you have for reducing stress on animals during an event?
A lot of it goes back to the handling them regularly, making it a regular occurrence to be moved around, trailered, even if it's just, they go in a trailer, they get an apple, they come out of the trailer, anything like that. The other tip is to act like it's normal. Like, for example, a horse. Sometimes you put them in the trailer, you take them for a trail ride, you bring them back. Your breathing's normal when you're doing that. Everything's good. You're normal. It's not an emergency. So if you try and have that facade, like okay, this is normal. We're just going in the trailer. Everything's okay. Because if you're panicking and, oh my gosh, we got to get out of here, we got to go, go, go kind of deal, it's going to, what could take 5 minutes is going to take 2 hours. So, try and stay calm, even if it's definitely difficult. I've had to evacuate my animals before, and it's extremely hard to keep that calm, move slow attitude when you just want to get everybody out of there. Some animals, especially if there's a wildfire near you and you might be going into a like an evacuation zone soon, but not quite yet, but it's, a chance. You can talk to your vet about getting like a calming supplement for goats, horses, anything like that. Even chickens, I think they have like some stressy stuff. So you can always talk to your vet about having calming supplements on hand so that if you are in that stressful situation, you can, under your vet's direction, of course, give your animals just a little bit of something to help them stay calm.
For people that don't get to see it, what does setup look like when you get the call that says, hey, we need you to set up a large animal shelter, typically at the Lane Event Center?
Well, after the office-wide panic attack, we go hook up.
We all have those. It's fine.
So we start with going out and we hook up both of our emergency. So we have a livestock, like a horse trailer, essentially. It's called a stock trailer. And then we have our other livestock trailer. But one is full of all of the paperwork, supplies, feed buckets, containers, cages, everything we need to get the shelter at least started. I think we have enough in there to successfully shelter 50 to 75 animals, depending on size, breed, type, species. And then we hook up to both of those. We pull them down to Lane Event Center. We get some tables set up. We get some stalls set up. We call Lane Force Products or whoever's available. They bring in some shavings. We get some stalls bedded. Then we get water buckets set in. We call our volunteers. Normally we have some on standby, kind of a short list of people who have said, yep, I'm available at any time to go. And we call them. We have them come in. They then help us get stalls bedded. We set up our intake, make sure we have enough copies of all our paperwork, and then wait for trailers to start rolling in or for people to start calling us for help.
How do you keep track of the animals that come in, right? Because, and maybe this is just me, but a chicken is a chicken. They all look the same to me. And I can't tell the difference between sheep and some goats. So how do you keep track of all that? Because you can have hundreds of animals at one time.
We use what's called livestock tags, or auction tags. They're also known as hip tags, but it's just a little piece of paper with a number on it. And you put a little dab of glue on the back and you put it on the animal, normally on the tail or on the shoulder. And then that number is assigned to that animal. Chickens and ducks normally come in flocks. So each flock gets a number, and then that number goes on their pen. And then the animal owner will come in and they'll get a bracelet, and the animal tag numbers will be written on the bracelet. So if they bring in 3 goats and 20 chickens, they'll have 4 animal numbers on their bracelet.
Do the animal owners have access to their animals when they're in the shelter?
So all animal owners are allowed to come in and care for their own animals if they want. We normally run quiet time from about 8 p.m. to about 6 a.m. unless there's just active emergency and active intakes coming. That way the animals have a set time where, things are calm. We have security, and then normally we have myself and the other officer and maybe a volunteer or 2 on site. Then about 6 to 7 in the morning, animal owners are welcome to come back in.
I would imagine it's really helpful for the animals and their owners if they're able to come and be part of their care, right? It's got to be stressful for everyone. And then to not have access to an animal that you likely care for and interact with daily would be hard for a lot of people.
Absolutely. We try and relieve that stress as much as possible.
That's wonderful. How do people generally get access to the shelter or to the sheltering in place options?
So there's a couple different ways. Normally right now, if we're doing it, we have a phone number that people can call. We post it on our website, and then our wonderful public information officer, Devon, normally posts it on the news for us. And people can call in with the information. Our office staff take that information, let us know what the situation is, what we have coming into the shelter, or what we need to care for. We're building an online reporting system so that people can just put in their information online and we can just be receiving those reports constantly as needed.
Isabel, where can people go to get more information about planning and preparation? Do you have any favorite resources?
So the United Humane Society, or the Humane Society of the United States, they have some really good information. Green Hill has some really good links on their page. It's mostly for smaller animals, but you just take out the word dog and put in goat, pig, horse, chicken, cow, whatever your animal is. A lot of it is the exact same kind of preparation, just you're looking at a different scale, like, bag of dog food, 50-pound bag of grain kind of deal. Then I think on Lane County Animal Services, we have a list of resources as well. You just go to the Lane County Animal Services website, and then under disaster resources, we should have something.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We started this with Devon talking about your 4th day of work. I feel like Lane County just does that to the emergency workers, right? Throw them into something in the first 5 days. Anything recent? Tell us about any memorable recent responses that you can share.
It's not super recent. It's a couple months old, but this year I did go out with the Oregon State Police and our Oregon State vet, Ryan, and we got an alligator out of a house, and we took him to a little rescue, and that was definitely pretty memorable. It's not every day you get to handle that.
You're brave.
I didn't do a whole lot of it, but it was very, very fun.
How big was it?
He was I think he measured out at like 6.5 feet. And he was a fairly large pet gator.
No, thank you.
He was all scaly and he had a little pool and stuff. He was fairly calm. We picked him up and we put him in a bin and we took him to a gator rescue, and that was that.
I don't know what to say. There probably aren't a lot of gator rescues in Oregon.
So there's 2.
Wow.
Fun fact, Lane County has one of the highest populations of pet gators in Oregon. It's Lane County and then Klamath Falls. Those are the 2 places with the most pet alligators in Oregon. I didn't know that. I learned that recently.
I'm not sure I wanted to know that.
That might be the most interesting thing we've had on the show so far.
It's an interesting fact. Yeah, I didn't know how many gators were in Lane County, but apparently it's something that the state police do. Like every year or 2, they're removing alligators. So it's a fun fact.
Now, it's not a legal pet to have, right?
No, it is not legal to have a gator.
Yeah, I want to give Tiffany a chance to wrap up, but I will say that over the 3 now fire seasons, I've had a chance to work with both you and our other animal welfare officer, Stacy. It's pretty incredible to see the system that you 2 have built, right? We didn't used to do this every summer in Lane County, and so there weren't great systems for moving large animals, caring for them, helping people shelter them in place. And you guys have just built an incredible program. And I think one of my favorite things is that every year you look for ways to make it better. I've never heard you say something is final. It's always, well, we're still working on this. When in reality, you now have a very solid system, but you're still always improving it. And I think just the amount of care that goes into it, both from all of you on the staff and then your volunteers, is just incredible. The shelter's always a very busy place and with a lot of people there to help.
Thank you very much.
Isabel, thank you so much for joining us today. I learned so much, and I think anyone listening has. The last question I have for you has to do with anybody listening who might be interested in volunteering, whether their time, their resources. I know in my old county, we had a plan that had a list of people who were willing to house animals. Who would they contact for information about that?
So they could just send an email to lcas@lanecountyor.gov, just our main Lane County Animal Services email. They can just send any information or any questions they have, and then we will get them any information they need.
Wonderful. Thanks again for being with us. What else do we have, Devon? Are we wrapped up for the day?
We are. I would remind folks that we are still planning to do a Q&A episode soon. So if there's something that we didn't get a chance to ask Isabel about or something you want more detail on, please send those questions into us, and instructions on how to do that will be in the show notes, along with links to all the resources that have been mentioned today.
When It Hits the Fan is brought to you by Lane County Emergency Management and co-hosted by Lane County Emergency Manager Tiffany Brown and Public Information Officer Devon Ashbridge. Music is by the Love Gems. Many thanks to our listeners and guests. We are so glad you're here to help us create a more prepared community. You can find more information, including episodes and show notes, at lanecountyor.gov/fan. Sign up to receive emergency alerts at lanealerts.org. The views expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of Lane County government.
All right, Isabel, on a scale of 1 to 10, how painful was it?
12. Horrific. I need to go home, actually. No, I'm just joking. It was good.